Saratov State Medical University in the Great Patriotic War during the 1941-1945, as the whole country was involved into the struggle with general enemy. For the first days of Great Patriotic War, most of the Saratov Medical Institute faculty members and students joined up for the war. They entered regiments and became the doctors of military field and evacuation hospitals. As Soviet Army needed new medical personnel, medical institutes of the country speeded up the graduation of the new specialists. The main attention was focused on the education of the general practitioners. The period of learning was shortened to 3.5 years. Future doctors studied military health regulations, military field surgery, infectious diseases with the course of epidemiology, and military hygiene. But from the autumn 1942, medical institutes returned to the usual curriculum and preparation of specialists in different spheres of medicine. Thousands of Saratov citizens were fighting in the front lines of the Great Patriotic War and showed combat courage and professional selflessness. Before the start of war with Germany, the leadership of the Soviet Union decided to form military medical faculties on the base of Moscow, Kharkov and Saratov medical institutes, and Narkomzdrav of USSR developed the plan of evacuation hospitals deployment. Military medical faculty at Saratov Medical Institute undertook with dignity their assigned task during the Great Patriotic War. The preparation of military doctors was organized from 1939 till 1943. Saratov region was one of the largest bases for the treatment of the injured soldiers. 97 evacuation hospitals were organized. The best public buildings, such as clinics, medical hospitals, sanatoria and hotels, were chosen for these aims. The treatment of wounded became the most important state assignment. In April 1942, Hospital Council of the Saratov Region Health was established that included 15 professors of Medical Institute and was headed by Sergei Romanovich Mirotvortsev. Moreover, Mirotvortsev was concurrently the department's chief surgeon of the evacuation hospitals. Evacuation hospitals of Saratov and Saratov region were the nearest frontline base of Stalingrad front. Permanent training surgery courses for the doctors of city and region hospitals were held to staff the evacuation hospitals with medical specialists. Also, crash courses of graduation from Medical Institute were provided. The whole 2,452 doctors were graduated during the war, and 1,633 were sent to Soviet Army and evacuation hospitals. More than 1,000 medical sisters and paramedics were prepared. In wartime, all Soviet nation felt the extraordinary rise of spiritual forces. Doctors and medical sisters worked quite often all day without time for the rest. Sergei Romanovich Mirotvortsev, though he was already 63 years in 1941, applied for enrolling to the front in the first day of war. He was designated the head surgeon of all Saratov and Penza regions hospitals. He was informed every second about the situation on the front. Saratov Garrison Hospital number 360 was the largest hospital, and its personnel greatly helped to return the soldiers again to front. The leading surgeon was Professor Agloblin. Also, such competent doctors worked there as Slavkina, Ilyachova, Lineykina, Kostina, Yunitskaya, and many others. The government highly appreciated the efforts of the hospital staff during the Great Patriotic War. By the 2nd of March in 1944, decree of the Supreme Council Presidium of the USSR Saratov Garrison Hospital number 360 was awarded the Order of the Red Star. The second major hospital base placed on the territory of the Medical Institute's clinical campus. Evacuation hospital was organized for 1,500 wounded. Yaroslavtsev, the medical service lieutenant colonel, associate professor and former rector of Medical Institute, and a skillful manager of healthcare, became the chief of this hospital. The head surgeon was Nedochetov, and the medical part was managed by Georgieva. Hospital was the base of the specialist retraining and prepared surgeons. New methods of diagnostics, operative, physiotherapeutic and physical education were introduced for the treatment of wounded and patients. Alongside with surgical hospitals, Saratov region also had different specialized ophthalmological, maxillofacial, neurosurgical, tuberculosis, psychiatric and infectious inpatient facilities. The head therapist of evacuation hospitals management was Professor Varshamov. The chiefs of specialized hospitals were Bogoslavsky, Gamburg, Gorelov and others. 48 scientists of Saratov Medical Institute worked as advisors for doctors of evacuation hospitals in Saratov and region. They were Professors Krause, Arkhangelsky, Shamarin, Golubev, Gerasimov, Lukova, Tretyakov, Kutanin, Davidson, Polyevktov, Rabinovich, Nekrasov, and many others. Their huge experience and knowledge provided high level of the medical help in all severe cases. Therefore, 82% of wounded returned to the front after treatment in these hospitals. Mortality rate of wounded and ill didn't exceed 1.4%. Surgeons of Saratov evacuation hospitals performed thousands of operations and medical consultations in wartime. For the whole period of war, 300,000 of wounded and ill Soviet soldiers were received treatment in Saratov hospitals. Their salvation and recovery depended on the art, skills and heart warmth of the physicians. Also, the care of Saratov and other region citizens, helping the wounded, contributed in the good and fast outcome of their condition. The treatment of wounded required a lot of donor blood. The whole country, due to the government's call, was involved into the process of donor service organization. During the period of Stalingrad battle, doctors in the evacuation hospital transfused about 2,000 liters of blood. Even health professionals became the donors. Sakhnova, the matron of the blood transfusion station, donated blood for 60 times. Kamerinskaya, the employer of the evacuation hospital, for 51 times. Glozman, the professor of the Medical Institute, for 30 times. Mass donorship was the act of self-sacrifice of exhausted and starving Soviet people, believing in their victory and loving their homeland. At this difficult time for the country, physicians and scientists of Saratov Medical Institute explored and introduced into practice the most efficient methods of wounded and ill patients' treatment. So Professor Arkhangelsky in 1943 designed a fundamentally new complex of surgical treatment of different forms of causal algae. Regardless the overemployment and fatigue, the doctors and scientists of Saratov Medical Institute performed research work, organized conferences for the exchange of professional experience. The chief surgeon Ivan Minaevich Popovyan in the 4 war years published 10 works concerning the actual questions of military field surgery. Later, Popovyan became the head of the Department of the Faculty Surgery and rector of Saratov Medical Institute. In 1942, Professors Lois and Fursaev realized a brochure named How to Prevent Scurvy Morbidity. The works of Uglov to the matter of the gunshot fractures treatment, Agranovskaya, gunshot pelvic bones osteomyelitis, Yakubovskaya, gunshot hip fractures were of great practical significance. The head of the Pathophysiology department, Professor Alexander Bohomoletz, introduced into practice immune cytotoxic antireticulum serum. It was used by the physicians to speed up the healing wounds and activate immune system. Bohomoletz serum was successfully included into the treatment of infectious diseases and fractures and was in high demand in evacuation hospitals during the war. Professors' works of Varshamov, Schwartz, Machlin studying the specificity of internal diseases during the wartime was also considerable. During the period of 1941-1945, the physicians and scientists published 67 research works, and about 200 reports were made dedicating the optimization of wound treatment, fractures, frostbites, neurotraumas, and internal diseases. Marshal of Soviet Union Bagramyan said, "Everything that was made by Soviet military medicine during the war fairly can be called the greatest feat." These words of famous commander give the high evaluation of medical employers' work and excellently reveal the significance of selflessness and heroic feat of Soviet physicians during the Great Patriotic War. Medical personnel provided assistance to the Red Army soldiers after the battles, in medical battalions and hospitals, and returned to the front over 72% of wounded and 90% of ill warriors. It was unprecedented achievement because medical service in Great Britain Army and the USA provided the return of 40–45% of wounded, and in fascist Germany about 40%. Such remarkable accomplishment of Soviet military medicine was distinguished by several reasons. The most important was the extraordinary dedication of paramedics, combat medics, medical orderlies, which carried their soldiers from the battlefield, medical battalion surgeons, which operated the wounded in the extremely conditions. The placement of medical units close to the front line allowed the medical aid to be possible in 86% of patients within 2 hours, thus favorably reflected in the treatment and speeded up the soldiers' return to the front. The accomplishments of Saratov physicians, which also formed the acting army, were great. Komarova, Volinsky, Shub, Zemlyanskaya, Goldstein, Mishkin, Mamykina, Kunitsina, Labanov, Shabanov, Rystsova, Sumovskaya, Anisimova, Ivanova, Karpel, Yegorova, and many other staff members and graduates compounded Soviet Army. Over 50 staff members and students gave their life for the victory. In memory of these heroes, monument was opened on the territory of the university. Such words are carved on its granite: eternal glory for the heroes, fallen in battles for freedom and independence of motherland.